So, very good evening. In last class, we discussed about various different ways of reading PHP forms or HTML forms through PHP, and we created a CV creator. Then we had a session on functions. Let's continue from there and let's try to understand what is functions, how we create functions in PHP, how we pass arguments, use a return type within PHP, how we pass arguments by reference or by values, and what are ways in which we can use inline functions in order to process various different data within PHP form. My name is Dr. Shanvadi. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe the channel, hit that bell icon so you receive these tutorials and notifications regularly. Let's begin. Now, we have this simple HTML page created. Again, this contains nothing more. Just a heading with PHP functions title with paragraph tag for adding some space after the heading. Now, in order to use functions or in order to use PHP first, we need to write these two code. Okay, tag question mark PHP. This is a typical PHP code. Every PHP or every time you're writing a PHP, again, you need to write this. Now, within this, basically, we write a PHP. In order to write functions, we create something called function, and we give it my functn function as a name. Okay, and then question bracket start bracket close, and then block start block close. Now, typically, this is a function, a reserve word, a keyword which identifies that you are declaring a function. We can write this as this is called declaration of function body. Okay, here we declare what my function is and what actions or task it will perform. Typically, we write the word function almost same as JavaScript. Then we give it a function name. Name can be anything. Usually, we give it a name which is more suitable to the task my function is supposed to perform. Then bracket start bracket close. In this case, we have not given any arguments, but if there are any arguments, we will give here, and I will talk about that later on. Block start block close. Now, typically, a function is defined as a block of code that performs a specific task. Each function we create performs a specific task that we might need to be repeating itself, or that some task that we might need to perform again and again. In that case, we create functions. By default, within PHP, there are more than 1,000 functions, default functions available within PHP that we use from time to time. We will be using them and discussing them as we go along. But here basically we are creating our own custom function. So in other words, this is known as custom functions, user defined functions, or what we called normal functions. Okay, creating your own functions. So you can call this as a user defined functions or a custom functions or just functions. In this case, in either case, you need to specify function as a keyword, your function name, and your block start. Then we write something, for example, right now, hello to function. Okay, so this is a statement that executes. Now again, a function block or a function basically is a block of code that performs a specific task. In this case, it's just performing this thing. Now, function is known as declaration. This is what we call known as a declaration, means we have declared function. Let's go and try to execute at this particular point. In order to execute, first we go on to our Apache server. Let's start this. And remember, I have already saved this file in my XAMPP htdocs functions folder. Okay, so once the server is started, if I show you, if I go save as, this file has already been saved in XAMPP htdocs functions folder. So I created a folder called functions and I saved this as index.php. Do remember to ensure that you save it as a PHP file. Okay, so every PHP code, every PHP file basically is supposed to go on a XAMPP server or any other server that you might be using. In this case, we are using XAMPP server. Within the XAMPP server, we have something called htdocs. So we save the files within the htdocs. Then within the functions folder, this will create our functions or this will create our functions folder on a server which we can access through our URL. Within this, I name this as index.php, or you can name it any other in this case. So save it. It asks me to replace it, but I just, because it's the same file, I'll leave it blank. Okay. So once we save it, this is our PHP done. Now let's head to the browser. Once we are in the browser, we come on a new tab and we type localhost, okay, and press enter. I usually tend to do this if the page is loading successfully, it indicates to me that my XAMPP server is working fine before I try to go and execute my page. See, it's taking some time. Let's hope it's executing. Okay. Sometimes what happens, you just directly try to access your page and your XAMPP is not working, or there's any problem with that, and you think it's the problem with your code, and it just drives you crazy. So here, functions, functio and function. I think that was my folder name / enter. Okay, see this, so this is giving me error. Let me go and check the folder name. So it's functions functions.com. Okay, so if you come here into file, open, you will see functions functions. So I go back into my browser and let me just correct this mistake. Fun functions. Now if I press enter, the page is displayed. Okay, so now what we did, we give a local host. Again, this is the URL or domain name for my local server. If I type in the IP address, it's 127.0.0.1. In our case, we just usually use a local host. So this becomes my domain name. For a professional website, whatever domain you upload there, we use that domain name. Because we are running the server on the local host on a local machine, we name it as a local host. That's the default name for the server. Okay. So once we are here, we type in the name of the folder because I have saved my file inside a functions folder. Okay, so this is inside a functions folder because it is named as index.php, so I don't need to write the file name. It's automatically loaded by the server. Currently, there is no other output other than PHP function example. One main reason being is we have the function, but we have declared it. However, we have not called the function. We have not required this function to perform this task. We have only declared it that this is what this function will do. In order to execute this function, we need to call it, which is called function call. So within this code, call function, which basically means you just write my function, and semicolon. Okay. Now this is called what we say function calling, which basically means that you are requiring your function to perform a certain task. Now this is declaring a function in which we define what my function will do, and then when we call the function, basically we tell the function what tasks it needs to perform. Okay, same principle in every other language. So once we do that, now we come back, save this file, come back into browser, hit a refresh, and hello function is executed. Now function is supposed to perform a specific task as many times as you want. So if I wanted to perform multiple times, I save it, execute it, it performs the task multiple times. Obviously this is a single string. Remember, we can write HTML code within the echo statement as well. This will now execute the code multiple times as we go along. Okay. Same thing, we can execute this code multiple times within the PHP and on a multiple places. For example, I have declared this PHP, I close it. Then I come here, I declared a paragraph tag. This is, I think, let me use lorem, lorem tab, yes, okay. So we use a lorem, just press tab, it comes here, and \p, I close. So there's some text here. Then I come back here, I declare another paragraph. Inside this paragraph, $p, PHP, and let me just close this PHP. Inside this PHP, now what I will do is I will just declare or call my function. That's it. So what we did is we declared this function within one PHP. Then there is some standard HTML code without any issue of a PHP. Then we again created another paragraph tag. Within this paragraph tag, we called the PHP. So within the paragraph tag, we call this PHP my function. If I press S, and in fact, I'm sorry, let me just close that. Let's just remove these things and add, in fact, another BR here, so that there's a space between these two things. So if I add BR, or what we can do is we can add some style to it. So style, for example, color is equal to red. That should do the trick. So we save it, hit a refresh, you see hello function. This is another way of using functions. So we declared the functions here, we call the functions within this PHP, or with what we can do is we can call it anywhere else in the file as well. In the same file, we can call this function anywhere else using again PHP bracket close within this PHP code. We can use this multiple times, Control C, come back here, as many times as you type, hit a refresh, the function is executed that many times. Okay, so what happens now is it's a function code that you can execute again and again. Even You just declare it one time and you can execute it again and again, even within different HTML tags. Okay? Within different HTML tags, we are declaring this, we can do that. So this is how we use functions. So whatever actions you want to perform, you give it here. Let's create another function now. Okay, so here we come back and let me declare function, okay, space, and for example we can say print name and block start, block close. This time we want this function to print a particular name that I give here. So I give it a variable, sorry, dollar variable. Okay, I come inside the echo statement and I can say echo the name is, and we can write dollar name. So what now happens is that whatever name you give here will be basically printed here. So this is dollar name. So now this name is considered as an argument. Argument we give within brackets. Whatever we write within brackets is now being done here as an argument. Argument basically means that when you execute this method, or when you call this method, or when you require this method to perform a task, in order to do that, you need to give some value to this particular method. So whatever value you will give will be used by this method to print. Okay, so in this case we have given it some value. This method requires us to give some value. So if I come back here and let's just get rid of all this unnecessary code that we did initially, and once we are in my function here within this PHP, let me call print name. But now if I write here, this will give me a problem. So let's just see. Okay, so I gave it empty brackets. However, when I declared the method, I gave it a name, meaning I gave it an argument. Argument meaning that once you execute or once you want to call this method to do its task, you need to provide it some value. Without giving it a value, it will not execute or it will not perform its required task. Okay, so in this case, if I don't give it a value, what will happen? So I didn't give it a value. So I come back into my code, I had a refresh, and you see this thing error. Okay, it says it's a fatal error, uncaught argument count error, too few arguments to the function print name, which basically means that there are too few arguments, meaning that this function requires some arguments, some value, something to process as per its declaration. As per its declaration, it requires something. However, you didn't give anything. So it's too few. It requires something, but you haven't given it. That's why it says too few arguments. There are too few arguments. There can be more arguments as well. For example, I can give it name, Zeeshan. However, comma, I can give it a two arguments, VSA_TI. Now, in my declaration, I've told it that it will require only one argument, meaning when it going to execute, we need to provide some value to it. However, we provided it two values instead of just one as per declaration. We save it, come back into code, hit a refresh. Now the name is Zeeshan. Okay, so it processed the first argument, but the second argument is lost. Why is that? Because it read that it requires only one argument. And PHP in this case is very general. If you are coming from Java, you would already know this will be error anyway, because there are too many arguments. However, in PHP it says, okay, I have got the first argument and it will process. It will just completely ignore that you gave it an extra argument. Okay, so if you don't give it argument, you get an error, but if you give it one too many, PHP is gentle with you and it won't complain. So if I remove this and now I have given it an argument. Now argument means once you process this thing, you're giving it some value to execute. Okay, it's just same like asking somebody or asking your brother to go and buy something. Okay, but once you tell him to go and buy something, you need to give him the money, that this is the money and go and buy something. But then again, what something? You need to provide some data that go and buy, for example, biscuits for me. So that is the data. That's hopefully clear. So now once we give an argument, in order to execute, we pass it argument. So whatever argument we give basically will be now printed on our browser window. Okay. So if I come back into the code and when I give an argument, I come and print the value. My name is, but if I give it BR here so that it appears on the new line, my name is, this will be printed. Okay. Control S. We save it, hit a refresh, and then my name is being printed. Now, the good thing about this is that we have created the function. The advantages of function is that you do not need to rewrite the code. Okay, with arguments, with the function becomes even more powerful. Now what happens is that based on the arguments, the function will do its task. So you don't need to rewrite certain code that are going to perform some tasks repetitively. For example, addition, multiplication, division, or reading the data from a form, processing the form data, validating the form data. In all cases, they need to read the form data. They need to read the text field. So all you do is you read the data and pass it to the form, and they will process the data. So in other words, we come back here and I call the function again, print name. This time I give it a different name, for example, Ali. Okay, and hit a semicolon. I call it the third time. So I'm just calling the same function without any other value. Okay, without any other effort, without any other declaration. Same function with 3 different values. Okay, same function will be executed, but every time it executes, based on the arguments, the output base is differed. So if I come back here, every time it executes and it prints a different value. That's the advantage of functions. We declare, we print something, and we process that code or instructions again and again, and we can change the code or change the output based on the arguments we give. So whatever arguments are given inside this, based on that, basically the output is changed every time. So this is called argument. Now again, we can give 2 arguments, for example, $surname. Okay, and this basically now means that when you want to execute this method now requires 2 arguments, name, surname. Okay, and so once we come here, this time again means that we need to give it 2 names or 2 arguments, which are in our case this thing. Okay, so now this basically means that when I execute, I'm give it 2 arguments. Now those 2 arguments will be read by this thing. If you give 1 argument, it will give error. So for example, in this case, Ali, and I gave it Ahmed, Ahmed, and Moeed, I just leave it blank. I come back here, hit a refresh. Now you see Zeeshan is printed okay, Ali is printed okay. Obviously we haven't printed the surname right, but when it went to the third time, it says too few arguments again. That's because Moeed is only 1 argument, whereas it says I need 2 arguments. Sorry, no compromise there. You can give more than 2, but at least you need to give me 2 arguments. So if you give anything less than that, I will complain. Okay, so I gave this name here. Okay, so for example, the surname is given. So now once you do that, come back here, hit a refresh. Now it's printed perfectly fine. Okay, so the number of arguments basically you give are based on that. You can temper this with whatever you like. So for example, $name, $surname. Okay, we can use the paragraph tags, we can use the bold tags. For example, I can come here, I can use the bold tags within the function or equal statements. This will bold the text. I think this is supposed to be B, and maybe underline. Okay, so control S, obviously we can close, or we should be closing it to follow a proper HTML5 standard. So let's just do that. In fact, this is not proper. It says that if you, what comes first should end first. So this is first, it's ending first, then B first, and then that should do the rate. Now we come back here, hit a refresh, and you would note that it's going fine. What's, okay, sorry, I changed this, control S. Now we come back here and we have a bib. Now the name is again underlined, that's because, okay, I forgot that, control S. Okay, so small mistake, \u. So this basically means that now underline ends here. So the next time it comes back, hopefully these are not underlined and these are only underlined. Sorry. Okay, so that's why closing is always appreciable within HTML5. So we may process 2 arguments, name and surname. We process that. Similarly, let's just work with another functions. Now in this case, let's just come back here, question mark PHP, and sorry, we don't need this tag, question mark bracket. This time let's just create function called func. Oops, what's that? I don't want that. Func function, for example, add. Okay, in this case we use 2 variables and we want to add them. So in this case, integer dollar value 1. I think I used this example in previous class as well. Integer value 2. Okay, so here we have specified the data type. We can also do that in arguments, which basically now mean that I need an integer type of arguments. So before you send an argument, you do need to ensure that the type of argument which is required is integer. Okay, in this case, once we come back here, I can use $answer is equals to value $value1 plus $value2. Sorry, 2. Okay, so What this will do is it will add the value 1, it will add the value 2 and give it to answer. Then once we are here, we can go into echo and we say the ANS answer is, and again I can use the bold, and this time I will just print $ANS, okay, which basically is this value here. Again, I can do this thing as well. Close this, hit a dot, and then print this. Remember, this is also legible. In other languages like Java or JavaScript, we use the plus operator to concatenate or join one string with the variable. However, in PHP, we use the dot operator. We also talked about this in last class. You can use this or you can use it within the string. It should do the trick. So once we execute this, we get the output. See, there is no addition. Why? Because we declared a function. Again, this is function declaration. There is no function calling. We need to call this function as well. So in order to call this function, we write just the math function name, bracket start, bracket close, semicolon. It requires 2 arguments. So for example, we give it 2 arguments. Just this simple one. Control S, hit a refresh, and now the answer is printed. So you can give a data type here as well. You can use it without data type as well. The PHP is very relaxed in that particular manner. Now, this is called argument passing. We gave it 2 arguments and we require this method that once you execute this, you still need to give 2 arguments. Anything less, it will create a problem. Arguments are basically initial values that you pass, that you give to this particular method. What we have done here is known as pass by reference. Okay, pass by reference, I think, or pass by value. Okay, if I call it properly. Pass by value basically means that, for example, once we pass this value, exact value has been passed. There is another thing called passing by reference. Let's just use a fresh example for that. So if I come here, file, save as, 2 methods of passing arguments, pass by reference and pass by value. Okay, remember these 2. Let me explain this. So for example, functn function argu argument dot php. Let me hit save. Okay, so I create this thing, and let me just get rid of everything else, and here we go. Okay, so function PHP function, that's fine. And now let me just give it for example h2 function arguments. Okay, one is basically what we call pass dash by value, value, and this is one. In fact, let's just use this thing. Okay, br, and we use the one is called pass by value, and then let me use a tag called br, and we use 2. Okay, and we use pass by reference reference. Okay, backslash h2. Now, 2 ways of passing arguments between function declaration and function calling. Okay, arguments are always passed between function calling to function declaration. So you call a function, you pass it the argument, the declaration will use that argument. 2 ways, pass by value and pass by reference. If you're coming from C++, Java, same thing exists there as well, even other languages as well. So once we are here, what we need to do is we come here, question mark PHP, and then question mark, let's just close this for now. So for example, we create a function here, or functn function, for example, add 5. Okay, add 5, and we give it a value called $num. Then within its body, we said num plus is equals to 5, semicolon. So whatever value argument we give us here, take that argument, add 5 to it, assign the answer back to 5. So this is assignment equal to operator. In fact, or in other words, this is basically equivalent to number is equals to dollar your number plus 5. So you can write this expression as well. But again, this is just an additional step. This basically means that take the whatever value is inside the number, add 5, and whatever the answer is, assign it back to the number. So it's like self-assignment and addition. We can do that same thing here. Simple as that. So a simple function that will just add 5 to whatever number we pass. Let me just create another function, or that's called functn function, add 6, and then block start, block close. This time what we do is and number. However, front of this number we use something called AND operator. Okay, when you use AND operator in front of a number in arguments, now basically you are trying to pass the number by reference. Here argument is passed by value. Okay, what we have done here is argument pass by reference. Okay, now what's the basic difference? The basic difference is that when you pass the number by value, the original value is duplicated or copied and sent to the value. Okay, so it won't affect the original value, it will only change the resultant value. However, once you pass a reference, then only the reference of the original value is given. Hence, whatever changes you make will actually affect the original value. Let me just complete the example, and then I might be able to explain this in a better tone. So again, plus is equals to 6 this time. Hit a semicolon. Okay. So same function, same thing. Only difference is we use AND operator here. Now let's just call this function. So for example, we say direct dollar value 1 is equals to 10. Okay, and hit a semicolon. Now what we have done here is that we declared a variable value 10 and we give a semicolon. Then we said that add 5 method okay, and obviously we have not printed these values, so let's just let's print it in the end. Okay, in other words, so add 5 and we give it dollar value 1. So what we did now is we just declared a variable outside this function. So function declaration 1, function declaration 2, variable 1 10, add 5 10. So what should happen now? So this variable value will be passed to number 1. The value should be added 5, I guess so. Okay. Once we come back here, we call add 6. Okay, and we give it the variable dollar value 1, same variable value. However, we have not printed the output, so let me just print the output here. Echo bracket start bracket close, and echo, let's just say value is, and we can say dollar value 1. Okay, and then control S, control S. Now let me explain pass by reference and pass by value again. Pay a little bit attention. Pass arguments, first of all, are basically way of passing data from function calling to function declaration. So this is called function calling, this is called function declaration. We pass the variable's value or data value from this method to this function so that it can read that value and process it. Okay, that's called argument passing. There are two ways of doing it: pass by value or pass by reference. Pass by value basically means once you use a variable, assign it a value, and pass its variable's value here, what happened here is that it will copy this value. It will not do anything to the original value. It will copy this value and send that value to its declaration. So this declaration function will receive a copy of it, okay, a duplicate copy of it, a duplicate copy of variable 1. Hence, whatever it does, this variable's value will have no effect on this thing. Just made a duplicate, passed it on a value. However, once we use this dollar sign, and sign, now what happened is that once you use a dollar sign and you pass an argument, same approach, nothing else, same approach, same variable is now passed here, nothing here, but only change is that in declaration we have used AND here. Even variable name is different, that even doesn't matter. Even the variable name is different, that also has no effect on it. What has the effect is this AND sign. Here with arguments, this AND basically means that now we are going to pass a reference. By pass a reference means once you give this variable's value to this value 1, it will actually send a reference to this variable, not a copy, just a reference to it. So whatever changes we make inside this will actually affect the original variable as well. Will actually affect the original variable value as well. Why? Because we had only given a reference to it. So the original value is still there. We just gave its memory location or memory reference. So whatever operations are going to be performed will actually be performed on the original operator because its reference was given, not a copy. In a value or a copy is transferred. In a reference, only reference is given. The data resides at that particular point. Whatever changes you do, the changes will affect that particular data. Okay, so that is what we do. So for example, let's just print this value. In fact, let me just hide this echo for now. So we are just going to print this variable value here. So I save it, function argument PHP. I come back into my server. Inside functions, let me create or call this function argum argument.php file. So once I execute this from PHP functions, function arguments pass by reference, pass by value, the value is 10. The value is 10 because let me just, I think if I can zip, that's we can, yeah. Okay. So the value is 10 because the value 1 was passed to this variable 1. The variable 1 value went here. It did the addition, but we didn't do anything here. There's no printing here. If I use the echo statement here, it will print I think 10 or 15 value. Okay, so it will print 15 here, but we have not printed here. We came back in here and we printed the value afterwards. So we took the value, we pass the value to a function, then we print the value, the same value. So it says no effect on this value. This is typically behavior what we do because only a copy of this variable was sent here. However, once you come here, same variable value 10 was passed to this method. Because it uses AND sign, this becomes reference. So whatever change we do here will actually change this variable. So let's control S, come back here, hit a refresh, the variable value is 16. Let me just add, for example, a BR thingy bob. In fact, it's recommended in HTML5 that you close even the single tags like this. It's HTML5 standards. We talked about this in one of the videos. I will try to leave the link below. Do watch it. It has some of the rules. So now you can see here value 10. So first time we call this value 10 because variable add 5 has just passed by value. So value was duplicated, sent to number changed that value. No effect occurred. However, in second time, value 1 was sent as a reference to add 6 method. So add 6 method received this only in form of reference. So it will, when it did the addition, num. See this, not even the variable, not even the same variable, different variable, but this different variable holds the reference to this original variable. So when it adds 6, it doesn't add 6 to num, it in fact adds 6 to the original variable. So original variable becomes 16. Now if you go and print the original variable, it says 16. This is simply what we say pass by reference and pass by value. In pass by value, a duplicate copy is made and passed to the variable. When you do pass by reference, then basically an actual reference is set and the original data is modified. Okay, a duplicate is not sent, the reference to the original data is sent. So whatever changes happens, the original gets affected. Okay, so this is what pass by reference means.